Welcome to Write with Love. I'm your host, Sarah Williams, best-selling author, speaker, and creative entrepreneur. Each week, I chat to passionate and inspiring authors about their journey in creative writing. Some are traditionally published, some do it themselves. Everyone's journey is different, and everyone has something interesting to say. We all love love and love what we do. Today's show is brought to you by our amazing fans and supporters on Patreon. If you'd like to help support the show and get some awesome bonus episodes, go to patreon.com/Sarah Williams Author to learn more. Now here's today's show. G'day and welcome to Write with Love. Today on the show, I'm chatting to Kate Stewart. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, so I'm talking to you all the way from North Carolina, my old stomping ground in America, which is so awesome. And I love your accent. Everyone's going to get to hear your really good Southern accent.
This is Texas grown now. This is Texas grown, but it is still Southern. So
It is. So can you tell us about yourself and your writing journey so far?
Absolutely. I did not publish until I was 36 years old. I actually started writing because my mother got sick with cancer, and I'd always dreamt about writing a book, always thought about it. Matter of fact, my girlfriend told me not too long ago that when we were sitting down for martinis one day, this is when we were in our 20s. It was 10 years prior. I was about 27 years old. I told her, I was like, I'm going to write a book, but first I'm going to teach this bartender how to make the proper martini. So flash 10 years later, I worked at an insurance agency, and my mom got sick with cancer, and I needed an outlet for these emotions. And instead of writing about her passing, I decided to write one of my many tales. It's not really, it's not fact-based, but it's fictional, but it is got a lot about the way I grew up and my rowdy times back in Dallas, and my mentality as a teenager, and the crap that we used to get into. So I wrote it, and I published that book. I wrote one prior to it, but it was a total nightmare. I had absolutely no direction whatsoever. I didn't have an editor. I was just very, very, it wasn't a good deal. So I published my second try on my 37th birthday, and it was called Room 212. And unfortunately, my mom did pass away, but it was something to grab all of those emotions, everything I was going to, was something to get my mind off of, or actually fuse the emotions that I was feeling as she was passing into something else, something productive. And it ended up being the antagonist of why I started my journey. And it's kind of bittersweet, because if her passing, or if her getting sick hadn't caused me to kind of take a look at life and what I wanted to do and really go for it, then I probably wouldn't be writing now. But it did, and it started something good. It started something productive, and it started something, it was a catalyst to something that I really, really wanted to do. So turned out working out for the best.
Everything happened for a reason, for sure.
Yes,
so did you
absolutely.
start submitting and trying to go traditional?
I didn't. I actually looked online, and I saw a picture of Colleen Hoover, who is actually one of my role models as far as being human. And I love her books too, but I saw there was a promotional thing on Amazon. I think I Googled self-publishing, and her face popped up, and it was a testimonial of her and her experience with self-publishing. And I was like, well, you know what? I'm just going to give it a shot. So I did. And Room 212 ended up being a top 100 Amazon bestseller. Now, this was 5 years ago, so it was much easier to hit. And I think I hit it on the 99-cent mark, but it was still, I had no idea what that meant. I didn't know what that meant at all. Someone had to message me and tell me it was a good thing. That's how it was. So it was pretty cool. It was pretty neat. But then I just went from there. My second book, I got contacted by an agent and invited to my first signing back in my hometown of Dallas, which was a very, very awesome. I fell off the couch when that happened. So I thought that was neat. So it's been an amazing journey. And then from there on, I was addicted. I was just addicted. I think on some level I started writing books to relate to others. I didn't live quite the traditional life as far as education and going off to college and getting married and having children and, the typical cookie cutter kind of American dream that most people do. And it's kind of a good rule, kind of a good system. But I think I just kind of lived 100 lives from age like 17 to 21 because I was really, really wild, and I kind of just decided I wanted to write them all. So I just started writing. That Room 212, and the fact that even a few readers loved it was enough for me. I always said if I had one excited, because I discovered Goodreads, I think my second book, I always said if I get one excited gift, over my books, I will have made it. And that was all I needed. So I got one, and she turned out to be the organizer of the Dallas event.
Wow.
And she was my first gift review. So it was like, to me, I could have died happy right then and there. That was it. But I just continued to write. I started working with an agent, and I kept pumping them out. Mm-hmm. I would work my full-time job. I would come home and I would write till 4:00 in the morning, wake up, rinse, repeat. It was just insane. I did not take part in holidays. I really, every spare moment I had, I was writing a book. I can't remember, my husband would literally have to rip me away from the computer the first 3-4 years.
Wow.
That's how addicted I was. And the more that I wrote, the more that I felt like I was growing as an author, and it was a good thing. Definitely a good thing. Because again, if I were to republish my first book, people would not recognize my writing. So it was a good thing that I've grown as the years have gone by. But yeah, it was addicting relating. It was addicting seeing how, if you wrote an inside joke in the script, people would be like, oh, I remember that. Very nostalgic at times writing. It's just a blast. It's just been a blast. Yeah. And it was just a year ago in January when I quit my job. Quit my full-time job.
Wow. So, and you've got quite a few books. I think I was counting.
I do. I was always terrified. And my dad kept saying, don't you do it. Don't you do it. You don't know what's going to happen. My dad's real conservative and save, and always have a gazillion dollars in the bank and never to take any chances. And finally I was just like, Dad, it's time, So I just did it. I was literally banging my head against my cubicle every day. And my bosses were amazing. One of them ended up being one of my very best friends in Charleston, and she understood my dream, and she just kind of let me, I did my job, but at the same time, she knew that this was going to take precedence if it ever became a thing. And I waited entirely too long. But I finally did it. So I'm a full-time author now.
Excellent. Yay.
I don't know how long. It's been one heck of a journey. Like, it's been unreal.
Yeah.
Unreal.
Yeah, no, I bet. So you've got something like 16 books?
I do. It's actually, we counted the other day. With novellas, it's 20.
Wow. And
then I think it's 17 books.
Yep. Excellent.
In 5 years.
That is really good. Oh my gosh.
I know a lot of authors pump out like one a month, but for me, basically having a full-time job the whole time I was writing, that was insanity. And writing as a pen too, so that was just woo.
Yeah.
But it's been fun. I've done a couple of anthologies. I did Cocktail, I did Team Player, and I think there's one more, but I can't remember honestly. Me and my girlfriend were sitting at the Boston signing the other day. I was like, how many is it now? You know, I don't sit back and go, ooh, I've written such and such many books. No. But it was pretty eye-opening. I was like, wow, I think we're about to 20, almost to 20 books. So
that's awesome.
Incredible. Yeah. And they're
Gosh.
so different too. A lot of them are really different the other, and I'm happy about that as well.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about heat levels between your different series and styles. So what can someone expect from Kate Stewart, but also you used to have this previous pen name as well called Angelica Chase. So tell us about the heat levels.
Okay, the heat levels are insane. And this is the reason why I had a pen name in the first place is because I have little brothers. Now, these little brothers are grown little brothers, but I still didn't want them peeking into these books and seeing what their little sister or their big sister is capable of. It was like, I was mortified. And one day my little brother Tommy said, oh, to hell with that. I'm so proud of you. I don't give a crap what you write. And I was like, oh. So he was actually the one that's, you know, and I always kind of wanted to let the cat out of the bag and let people know, like, look, I've got this dirty side.
Yeah.
And it's suspense too. So I did republish them, I think, in 2017 in my name, but those books are filthy. They're just filthy. But they're not all about sex. The very first one is about, kind of like an awakenings of someone who knows that they have certain urges and is curious to see if that Christian Grey lifestyle is out there. That is a lifestyle book. So yeah, it is heavy on the sexuality, but it's also very twisty too. Mm-hmm. Every single one of my books that were formerly under the pen Angelica Chase all have romantic suspense plots, but on a scale of 1 to 10, they're like a 10. Yep. High 10. They are not public reading books. They're not anything that you want to be reading in a room full of people. They're extremely erotic. They are erotic. And they're all labeled erotic romance on Amazon, I believe, or they all say formerly penned by Angelica Chase. Now, my current releases like Method and Drive, these are, I would say, on a steamy scale. It depends on if not inappropriate words, but it depends on if appendage words are a trigger. In other words, I don't hold back with those words in particular. The sexy words for the anatomy. Yeah. I guess you could say. So if those are a big no for you, then these probably aren't your type of books. But, you know, they're not overly used. They're used in the moment. And I'm not a fade to black author whatsoever. If I'm going to build up a suspenseful, loving, passionate relationship between two people, then I'm just not the type to close the door. And I do respect those that do. You know, there's a certain level of tact that you just got to use when you're writing these kinds of scenes. But for me, this is kind of, and a lot of authors don't like it, but this is one of my favorite parts of writing. I love it when my couple gets together and shows their love in a physical way and gets intimate. And a lot of times it is a sort of, it can be sexy times, but there's also like a serious connection when they're passionate. And so I can't apologize for that. No. I actually love it. I love it. Yeah. I love it when they get together. I love it when they get physical. I love it when they show their affection for each other through physical acts. It's just, yeah. I mean, that's part of romance. So yeah, I would say the heat levels on the, I've written 2 romantic comedies, Anything But Minor and Major Love. Those are more slapstick, but they also are not fade to black and have physical. I would say those are about an 8 or a 9. Yeah. So I would say 8 or 9 on the contemporary romance. Definitely a 10 on the erotic, because I hold nothing back and I even get a little dirty. Yeah. So those are my heat levels. They're pretty hot.
Oh, it sounds intriguing.
Heat levels, need a fan.
Thank God for an ebook.
I hope so.
So Drive was a book that came out in 2017, and you actually got a lot of commendation for that one. Got
That
awards.
was unreal. That was my Hail Mary book. I was having a rough writing year.
Yeah.
One of the books I love most of, and it's funny we talk about steam factor, because I think steam might have offset the beginning of the book that I was kind of the Brave line. It's one of the books that I feel like is one of my very best. I don't know. I haven't looked at it in a while. I really don't go back and reread my books. I have a feeling if I did, I would cringe a little because my writing has changed with each book. But that one started off really super steamy, but it had a really serious message behind it. It was about a cop and his dispatcher, and it had really relevant stuff in there. And I really thought that book would get a lot more, not attention, but I thought it would be read. I thought it would do better than it did, period. And you're going to have failures, and you have to get used to that. But that was a book that, it's kind of like the book you always have your heart set on never really does well.
Yeah.
That's kind of a rule of thumb, and that's kind of a book that I had my heart set on. I really wanted readers to like it, and I really hoped that it would be the one. And so that whole summer I was just a little bit blocked and just a little bit, I don't know, if this thing's going to work out. It was like one of the darkest times of me being a writer. And so Drive was my Hail Mary. And I just wrote it because, first of all, it was my very first book idea. It was going to be originally called Radio, because we didn't have playlists when I had that idea back 10, 15 years ago. It was actually going to be my very first book. And it was about a girl who listened to the radio and went back in time. And thank God I waited to write it when I did, because I was able to do that cool playlist thing of putting the music link at every chapter heading and stuff like that. But Drive was kind of this is me. This is the best I got. This is the most personal story I could ever tell, because it is fact-based. It's reflective of a time in my life when I was in love with two guys. And so a lot of what happened in the book actually happened to me. And then a lot of it was fictionalized. So it's not 100% true, but it's got factual things in there. Yeah. I did fall in love with my sister's best friend, and there's a lot of me in Stella. And so it was kind of a Hail Mary, and to see it received the way it was received was one of the most epic. It was an amazing time for me. Because it was kind of like, okay, well, here's the best I got. And they're like, okay.
That's pretty good. Okay,
well, maybe I won't throw in the towel just yet on this writing thing. Maybe don't give it another college try. It wasn't that it was just a discouraging year. And I think everybody has that. And I think every author at one point has a release that they really hope does well, that might not do as well as they think they should. And that was just my time to go, okay, well, I'm just going to write whatever I want straight from the hip, from the heart. And if they like it, great. If they don't, oh, well, I guess I'll go back to, just pick up the phone for insurance. So it's so weird. It's so weird how it happened.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And you've got the cover of that book. Can you show it to us?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. So it's kind of got the little
first week. I just I was at a signing, and the coolest thing happened. I was at a signing in Dallas, ironically, with my entire family behind me.
Wow.
And they had come up to see me because they all still live in Texas. And I looked over at my stepmom because it was the first time that I'd ever needed wristbands. And the minute they said, okay, we're going to have to block her table so she can get people to, I just looked at my stepmom and we just both started crying. It was the coolest thing ever. And so I was like, okay, I can die happy right now because this was my Hail Mary. This is what I got. This is my true voice. This is who I am book. And to see it embraced that way, it was awesome. It was awesome.
And is it still your best-selling novel?
To date, yeah, absolutely it is. And this and the cool thing is as much of a blessing as it was, is still it's an Achilles heel too.
Yeah.
Because everybody wants Drive too, and I'm like, I'm not incapable of that. So, you know, when I went to write my next book, I was absolutely mortified. You know, how am I gonna? It sucks, but it's like, how am I gonna top that? How am I gonna recreate that magic and have them fall in love with something else, hopefully just as much. Not everybody loved Drive. I'm very aware of that, but those who did are very, very, very diehard fans of the characters, and I was like, how am I going to top that? It's very intimidating. It was a big swallow. Hold on, let me take a drink of water. Yep. That's how scared I am. But I wasn't expecting it. I was just hoping for it. But I basically ripped my heart out and just said, here, and it worked out for the best. And I couldn't be happier about it.
Yeah.
It's now been translated into 5 languages. So,
wow.
And I'm going to, you know, I think every writer hopes that their book will be picked up for a movie. But instead of just hoping, I'm actually downloaded screenplay software.
Yeah.
One of my biggest heroes is John Hughes. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, the writer of Pretty in Pink and The Breakfast Club and so many others, Flubber, Home Alone. He's done so much more than people think, or many people know he's done. And so I'm going to actually use Drive as my guinea pig and make it my first screenplay that I'm writing. So
that's exciting. Gosh.
I mean, it's another pipe dream, but then again, I didn't think I would sell any books when I was telling a bartender how to make martinis. So
yeah, exactly. You never know.
I'm just going to give it the good old college try.
Yeah. Well, I'm a big believer in, if you want something, go out there and ask for it and do it. I think
with the market the way it is these days, and Netflix coming out with a new movie every other week, and I think just as the indie market is open to, or the book market is now open to indies in a way, I think it's open to screenplay writers in a way as well. I think it's the same sort of, I could be talking out of my butt, but I think because of all this new Prime and Netflix and all these channels doing their own movies, instead of the Hollywood, I think there's a lot more of a platform for those aspiring screenwriters now. To write movies specifically for other avenues. So I think if there ever was a time to get in, it's probably now.
Yeah, well, I'm going to be watching with bated breath to see how you go.
Hey, I am under no illusions that this is going to happen, but the thing is what if? And there's always a what if, you know. If this kid from Dallas, Texas, I'm actually a high school dropout. So if this kid with a 10th grade education can publish 20 books, you know, and I had to do a lot of recon when I started writing. I had to do a lot. But and years ago, I would have been embarrassed to admit that I'm a high school dropout. I did get my GED and I did go to college for a little while, but if this high school dropout can write 20 books, then you can you know what I mean? It's just one of those things where you're right. If you want something, you have to go after it. But I did work my butt off, and I still have a lot to learn. I'm always going to consider myself a student.
Yeah. Absolutely. And the industry keeps on changing. I mean, we were just talking, your books are all in Kindle Unlimited, which is absolutely fantastic, and that works so well for so many people. I'm a wide author because I write about Australia, and Kindle Unlimited is not a great market when your books are Australian and our second biggest market is Kobo. So so
Kobo to me is some land like the river.
It's like a Canadian business, like
I've I've never done well wide. I've never done well wide, and a lot of authors do, and they do amazingly well, and I'm my hat's off to them. But I have, the minute I went KU, things changed for me. I think having a large selling book absolutely helped. Did it help? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But people would be surprised at how much marketing has to do with it at this point. It's kind of a play to pay world at this point. And I feel really bad for indie authors just starting out. You know, years ago, when the forefathers, meaning the groundbreaking indies, came out, they didn't have to make as much noise or spend as much to get their books seen. They had I wouldn't say they had a free highway by any means. I would just say that you know, and even they will say it, you know, I watched Rachel's interview, and she was like, you know, it's not the way it was years ago, and it's really truly not.
Yeah.
You know, for the new indie starting out, they have a whole hell of a lot more to deal with, and a whole lot more walls to break through in order to get their leg in. Yeah. Unless they have a runaway hit. Yeah. And you never know. And you never know. It could be you. It could be any one of you.
Yeah.
Huh?
That's it. I talked to Bella Andre a couple of years ago, and she was one of those pioneers. Awesome. Oh, she's fantastic. Love it.
That's so great. My stepmother got me reading her books when I first started writing. And so I read like 7 of them in a row. and that's funny you mention her.
Yeah, well, she was saying that she put a book up on Amazon and checked it like, I don't know, 3 months later, and she had all of these sales, and she was so surprised. And then, of course, she had Amazon calling her.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
it's so weird how some of this stuff comes full circle.
Yeah.
You know, remember, I'm just the kid who wanted an excited gift on Goodreads.
Yep.
Now, I would rather shoot my foot off than go to Goodreads.
Yes.
Because it's a terrifying place to be. You know, everyone's a critic, and I get it, and people are totally entitled to their opinions, but it's kind of a scary place for authors at times. So, especially when you've just released the book, that you know is going to be a hit or miss. Yes. And I purposely write that way, not hoping to miss people, but knowing that some people it's not going to be their bag. And I still continue to write and publish the book anyway. Yep. Because I think that's what we should do in order to have an authentic voice. So.
Yes, absolutely agree.
Absolutely.
So your latest book that came out was Method. Do you want to tell us about that one? And show us the cover?
Hit or miss book.
This is the hit or miss book?
Yeah. Well, I actually wrote 4 major writing rules while writing this.
Yeah.
Do not have flashbacks. If you have flashbacks, don't make it an editorial of the book. And if you do, don't put them in italics, and don't have flashbacks within flashbacks. So this story is exactly that. And I spent 6 weeks working on the timeline alone. Wow. Just to make this work. But this is a story. I've always been fascinated by method actors. Do you know what a method actor is?
You should explain it for anyone else who doesn't.
Okay. I will. A method actor is one of those. The most well-known is probably Christian Bale, Daniel Day-Lewis. What they do is that they live their roles while filming. They live their characters while filming. In other words, they keep their accent, they keep their mannerisms. They do a whole hell of a lot of research to submerge themselves into their characters and not just play them. And there's this huge controversy in Hollywood, or not controversy, but a huge debate on what method acting is. And some actors make fun of other actors for doing it, and I put this in the book too, because this is a fact, over 50% of Oscar winners are method actors. Wow. And it's because they put their heart and soul into these, but it can cause into these roles, but it can cause relationship problems. It can cause health issues. Christian Bale got severely skinny, lost a lot of weight to play the machinist. Adrian Brody left his girlfriend, left all his worldly possessions to identify with a Holocaust survivor to play in the piano, which he won an Oscar for.
Yeah. Yep.
Heath Ledger isolated in a hotel room for 6 weeks
Mm-hmm.
and deprived himself of sleep to play the Joker, which
Mm-hmm.
he won an Oscar for, and he also died.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying it's method acting, and I'm not cashing in on anything like that. That's not it.
Yeah.
This has been going on for a very long time, and I just thought it would be interesting to write a love story between a husband and wife, a power couple, who are together, and he takes on his best friend actually dies at the beginning of the book. And it's locked around a scandal, and it is a suicide. And it's in the first few chapters of the book, so that's not a spoiler, but his best friend commits suicide, and then he takes on this role of a lifetime playing this gangster. And he goes method. So instead of dealing with his grief, he submerges himself into this role, and it wreaks havoc on his marriage. So throughout the book, you're getting to see his friendship with his best friend, and then how his wife came to be, and how they came to be the power couple that they are, and then the implosion of him not dealing with his grief properly while playing this role of this gangster. He's like a 1970s gangster. So it's tough. It's a tough subject matter. It's and he's good looking.
He is. Doesn't hurt.
It took me quite a while to read this story, but it is, there are a lot of flashbacks throughout the book. I have these awesome sayings, and the book is actually based on one of my very favorite quotes, and it's a quote by Jim Carrey.
Mm-hmm.
And it says, I think everybody should get rich and famous and do everything they ever dreamed of so they can see that it's not the answer.
That's a good one.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Because even though Jim Carrey's
mm-hmm.
he's one of my heroes. So
yeah. Aww.
And he's really, really a smart man.
Yeah.
And, there's quotes by all kinds of actors in there. And I did it a lot for the writers too. Mm-hmm. The book is actually dedicated to all creatives who kind of bleed a little for the craft. I kind of figured out that I'm a method writer while I was writing this, that I'm so empathetic with my characters, and I really don't stay objective enough to think that I'm writing someone else. When I'm writing them, I am them. And maybe a lot of other authors are like that, but for me, that's the only way to have an authentic experience. Is to become them. I know that's a little kooky, but I think we all kind of do it in a way when we're writing. To make it more of an authentic experience. Yeah. So I'm thinking there's a lot of other method authors out there. I'm sure there's a lot that are objective enough to no, that's just the character. But when I walk away from a book, I have to kind of unravel from it because I'm so emotionally involved. Yeah. And that's the way I've been with my last 4 or 5 books. So I'm not saying it's healthy. Especially with this one right here. This method is actually a product of this book.
All right. So that's Warfare.
Heartbreak Warfare.
This
was the hardest book ever. I wrote it with Heather Orgeron, and it was the hardest book I've ever written in my entire life. I've never cried ever like I have writing this book. It's a story about 2 soldiers who get captured by some radicals, and they fall in love. She's happily married, and he's a 25-year-old hotshot. So if that gives you any indication, I can't even. So I'm pretty sure method started really heavy here and resulted in this. So yeah, everything happens for a reason.
That's it for sure. Gosh,
I'm sure you do the same thing. You get involved with your characters to a point where you're feeling what they're feeling, and you're thinking how they're thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. You do, especially when you spend this many hours in a character's head and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's incredible. Yeah. I'd never really thought of it like that though, so that's really interesting. Wow.
Yeah, well, my sister had to point out to me, hey, crazy, you're a method writer. You are talking like you're him right now. I'm like, oh, Okay.
Okay.
I might need to take a vacation.
Yep, that's it.
And that's why I'm writing something funny right now. I was like, I'm not doing that again for a while. I need a V8.
Yeah, for sure. Gosh. Well, what are you working on now? You're doing something a bit more light?
I am. I haven't written a comedy since 2016, and I do not like to call myself funny at all. I think that's just, I don't want to say I'm funny, you know? So even calling it a comedy is just kind of like, who do you think you are?
Yeah.
So I call them dramedies because I never really have a book that I don't try and make sure that the heartstrings are tugged at some point.
Lovely.
So this is going to be called The Guy on the Right. And the blurb is basically, he is the underdog. It's an underdog love story.
Yeah.
He's not the abs guy. He's the Mabs guy. He's got maybe abs. You know what I mean? So basically it's a story of a guy in college who actually got screwed over pretty bad by his ex-girlfriend. He waited for her sexually all through high school and through 2 years of college, and of course she goes and sleeps with someone else. So at the beginning of the book, he's actually just rented a house, and his new roommate is like the king wide receiver of the football team. This takes place in Texas, College Station. And he meets this girl at a party one night, and they actually end up having a really bad night, and it's pitch black, and they kind of share war stories. And they see each other again, but he only recognizes her by her voice, and they end up hanging out. They ended up being together, and everything is fine and dandy until the roommate sees her.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, the end of the blurb says, standing in a picture next to me, he might seem like Mr. Perfect, but he's underestimating the guy on the right.
Right.
So yeah. Spoiler alert in this book. Spoiler alert in this book: the underdog is going to win.
Excellent. Well, that sounds awesome.
So I don't mind writing the typical hottie, abs, whatever guy, the unattainable. Like I'll write plenty of those books. But I wanted to write not a guy next door. He's not exactly a geek, though he is in the band. He is in college band. But he's just different. He's above average in a lot more ways than his roommate will ever be. And I just want to write the story about that guy. I'm not the hot guy in the picture. I'm the guy next to him. You know what I mean? That's why it's called The Guy on the Right.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. So when do you expect that one to be out?
July, I hope.
July. Awesome.
Going from serious books back into comedy is not as easy as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I bet.
So right now I'm just kind of doing a lot of research. And when I say research, I'm talking pop culture. I'm reading funny books. I'm watching funny movies.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get back into the headspace because my books are so emotionally taxing. And a lot of the times they're so serious and deal with serious issues that even now I'm just like taking this way too seriously. I'm writing this college romance like too serious. So I've got to figure out a way to lighten up a little, but so far it looks like we're going to be on target. I've gotten quite a few done. I've gotten about 20,000 words of it written. So it's not a total disaster, but I'm just trying to make sure I keep it lightweight.
Yeah.
So it looks like July.
Awesome. Oh, that's very cool. Well,
I'm excited. The cover's going to be completely not like anything anyone has ever seen.
Oh, cool. So will we be able to see your cover on your website and your social media and all that sort of thing? It's
actually not. We're starting to design on the 24th. So yeah, we'll be sticking it on my website. My website, www.katestuartwrites.com.
Excellent.
And then I'll have all my social media links. Everything that about me is on there. Yeah. And all my upcoming books and everything that I've released. So all the links are on there. KateStewartWrites.com.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today, Kate. I had a really good time learning all these new things.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you having me on here.
No worries.
Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the show. Jump onto my website, sarahwilliamsauthor.com, and join my mailing list to receive a free preview of my books and lots of other inspiration. If you like the show and want it to continue, you can become a sponsor for just a couple of dollars a month. Go to patreon.com/sarahwilliamsauthor. And remember to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and leave a review of the podcast. I'll be back next week with another loved up episode. Bye!